I would like to begin this presentation with the words of Alvin Toffler, which goes, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn and relearn." To the panel of evaluators, Dr. Emelisa Estemo, Dr. Maria Cecilia Alimen, and Dr. Paterno Alcartado, good afternoon. I am Jonel D. Coros, a teacher from the Schools Division of Cadiz City, and at the same time, a graduate school student from the University of Negros Occidental Recoletos. I consider it both an honor and a privilege to present before you my study titled Self-Directed Learning, Self-Efficacy in Learning, and Academic Motivation of Public Senior High School Students. Self-directed learning pertains to the learner's disposition toward learning activities. It is characterized by taking personal responsibility in meeting learning competency needs, finding necessary resources, and executing learning endeavors with or without the help of other people. Self-efficacy in learning is a cognitive appraisal of the learner's belief towards a learning task. Hence, it only exists in and only holds true on the individual's mind. Academic motivation refers to how engaged the learner is towards the learning task, as driven by his motives or perceived reasons. The pandemic brought about significant shifting in learning delivery modalities. A survey conducted by Youth Truth, a nonprofit research organization based in the United States, to 20,000 students showed that self-directed learning is the key to the success of distance learning amidst the pandemic. According to Lounsbury and others in 2009, self-directed learning, when viewed as a personality trait, is unidimensional, and it cannot be observed directly. However, it may be associated to the individual's self-efficacy in learning and academic motivation. The Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan articulated that distance learning requires students to be independent learners for it to succeed. So the absence of data on learner characteristics relevant to the demand of new normal in learning, especially in the local context, propelled the conduct of the study. Accordingly, the study aimed to assess the degree of self-directed learning. We can use the acronym later on as SDL, degree of self-efficacy in learning, also SEL, and extent of academic motivation, also AM, of grade 12 senior high school students in the Schools Division of Cadiz City during the school year 2020-2021, when they are taken as a whole and when they are grouped according to demographics, enumerably sex, family income, and tract. Moreover, it sought to determine the extent of correlation between demographics and SDL, SEL, and AM. Finally, the study sought to determine the extent of correlation between SDL and SEL and AM. The study employed descriptive correlational approach. The respondents of the study were the 332 grade 12 senior high school students determined using multi-stage sampling. To assess self-directed learning, the study utilized the 10-item self-directed learning inventory developed by Lounsbury and Gibson in 2006. For self-efficacy in learning, the 57-item self-efficacy in learning form developed by Zimmerman and Kitsantas in 2007 was utilized. For academic motivation, the 28-item academic motivation scale, high school version, developed by Valeran and others, was utilized. For descriptive analysis, percentage distribution, mean, and standard deviation was utilized. For inferential problems, non-parametric statistical tools were employed. This is justified by the Kolmogorov, Smirnov, and Shapiro-Wilk test, which showed that data on SDL, SEL, and AM are not normally distributed. The chi-square test of association was used to determine the significant relationship between demographics and SDL, also demographics and SEL, and demographics and AM. The Sperman-Rank correlation was used to determine the significant relationship between SDL and SEL, and SDL and AM. The researcher primarily adhered to the ethical guidelines in the conduct of research set by the University of Negros Occidental Recoletos. And now for the results of the study. In total, there were 332 respondents who participated in the study. Results indicate that majority of public senior high school students are female. They belong to low-income families and are enrolled in TVL track. Among the demographics, the largest difference is attributed to family income, where the respondents from low-income families comprised almost two-thirds of the total number, 66.3%, compared to high-income families, which is 33.7%. The next table is a summary of the degree of SDL, degree of SEL, and extent of AM. Results showed that they have high SDL, high SEL, and great AM, whether taken as a whole or when grouped according to demographic variables. The next table shows the relationship between demographic variables and SDL, SEL, and AM. There was no significant relationship between demographics and SDL. There was no significant relationship also between sex and self-efficacy in learning. But there was a significant relationship between family income and track to self-efficacy in learning. It entails that students' personal belief in their innate abilities and capacities to achieve academic goals or competence in a particular academic task is influenced by their financial status and by the track where they belong. There was no significant relationship between demographics and AM. The last table shows the relationship between SDL and SEL and SDL and AM. There was a significant relationship between self-directed learning and self-efficacy in learning. Also, between self-directed learning and academic motivation. These suggest that the disposition of respondents to engage in learning activities is influenced by the degree of their personal beliefs in their innate abilities and capacities to achieve their academic goals. And it is also influenced by the extent of their interest to participate in educational activities. For the conclusions, public senior high school students' interest in a learning activity as well as on their disposition to engage in learning activities cannot be attributed to their demographics. There are, however, two variables that could boost or weaken their belief in their capabilities, which are family income and the track where they belong. Since the study empirically established that a correlation exists between self-directed learning and self-efficacy in learning, it follows that a student who has strong belief in his capabilities is capable of mastering competence on a particular skill, subject, or activity with or without the help of other people. Since the study also empirically established that a correlation exists between SDL and AM, it follows that a student who is internally driven to learn something will find all means to master competence on it, even without the help of other people. And now for the recommendations. School administrators, recognizing that self-directed learning influences self-efficacy in learning and academic motivation, and vice versa, shall integrate topics that emphasize this interplay during focused group discussions, learning action cells, and school-based in-service training, and the like. Teachers, as the forefront of instruction, shall consider the possibilities and give due understanding as to why students from low-income families and from TVL track may exhibit reluctances in apparently challenging academic tasks. Also, teachers shall recognize the interplay between SDL, SEL, and AM. That any action made to strengthen or weaken one construct will impact the other. The results of the study provided a window to Filipino educators as to the capability of the students to implement independent learning, complementary to learner characteristic needs for pandemic-induced distance learning. In a grander scale, the study contributed to the body of literature on SDL, SEL, and AM, most especially in the local context. I'd like to close this presentation with a question posted by UNESCO's Assistant Director General, Ms. Stefania Giannini. It goes, is what people learning today truly relevant to their lives? Thank you for listening.